I had a feeling that I was going to make a Disventure Camp video sooner or later, and honestly, I'm glad to do it. I'm not super attached to Disventure Camp like some others are, but I watched the second season a while back, and I remember having fun with it. I had a lot of discussions with friends over the episodes, the characters, the voice acting. It was fun. I went back and forth deciding on what type of video I wanted to do with Disventure Camp, and one thought immediately came to mind. I cannot do character reviews. That's not to say that Disventure Camp has a bad cast per se, it's just that I feel a lot less passionate about this cast than I do with the 2023 characters. If I really had to, I could probably stretch out a review for one or two of the characters in Season 2, but it would probably be a lot closer to the Scary Girl video in terms of length, and I doubt I'd be able to say as much as I did for the Nichelle or Chase videos. And to be fair, the fact that this cast currently only has one season of runtime— Hey! How's it going? I don't mean to interrupt the video, but I have to set the record straight. This video is hella outdated. Not in terms of the rankings themselves, I'd probably keep those about the same, but in this section I initially talked about how I hadn't yet seen Season 1 and only Episode 1 of All-Stars is out. That's not the case anymore. I've seen Season 1 and I've seen up to Episode 6 of All-Stars. So instead of redoing all this footage, I'm just gonna occasionally cut in with some added commentary, okay? After this, I plan to do a video where I sort of go over the season as a whole, but maybe a little less detailed. I don't think any of my editors have it in them to do like a multi-hour video. And I have a third video that I might want to do, but I won't reveal that until the end of that video. As for this video, I'm going to be doing my personal rankings of every character in Disventure Camp Season 2, so I hope you're ready for that, because it's about to start right after the intro.
Disappointment in the game of life!
Starting at the very bottom of the list, we have who I consider to be the worst Disventure Camp character of Season 2 and Season 1. Nobody really came close to being as bad as this next character, despite Derek's best attempts. But I sincerely doubt that anyone from that season could be worse than Crystal. Oh my god, where do I even begin? Okay, so you know how from Roti onwards, Chris became overly sadistic to the point where it really dragged down his character? Yeah, that was bad, but all the sadistic shit Chris did to his contestants was overly dramatized and cartoony, so you didn't really have to take it that seriously. But that's not the type of show that Disventure Camp is, and that's not how Crystal torments her contestants. Some of the stuff that she puts the contestants through feels a lot less like cartoon hijinks, and a lot more like a raving narcissist is forcing people to do her bidding to fill her own ego. This woman has problems. Her story is that she's Chris's daughter and that she doesn't want to end up like him. Sure, that's fine. We even have her confide in Oliver, asking him to rein her in when she goes too far. Okay, sure, this can work. I am on board with this premise. Here's the problem. They have this conversation in Episode 2, and immediately after, Crystal cranks up the narcissism for 3 straight episodes. Episode 3 is just make out with another person, the challenge, which despite having a very gross premise and little actual substance in the episode, still manages to be made worse with Crystal's commentary. Like, lady, you are a grown-ass woman hosting a reality show, not a teenager on Wattpad. Shut the fuck up about Yowie. Oh, but it gets worse. The episode after that has Crystal force out some personal information from the contestants. Not secrets, personal information, some of which feels downright exploitative. For example, Crystal has a bad habit of sexualizing the contestants, which she does to Rhea and Allie in this challenge, so, not good. But it's relatively small potatoes when, in that very same challenge, she thought it was appropriate to bring up the subject of abortion and sex changes in the secret revealing challenge. That is not even secrets, that's just a violation of privacy, and it's genuinely sickening. It's about as sickening as asking someone to throw their medication into an open flame, which she does in the following episode. Honestly, episode 5 is just an unpleasant experience the entire way through. And again, this is 3 episodes in a row of a 13-episode season. That is more than 20% of the season, where Crystal is just this downright malicious person. She takes up so much time that she partially takes away from Yule's elimination and overshadows Maggie's entirely. Lake nearly gets pulled out of the game at her parents' request, and all the reasons given are directly because of Crystal. Despite being the host, she's given more screen time and sometimes more plot importance than the contestants, and I just don't care. She gets a little better as the episodes progress, but she doesn't become anything close to tolerable until at least half the show has passed, and by that point it's just too late. The worst part about it is that she doesn't get her comeuppance for any of the awful things she does. Oh, she has a hard time hosting the show without Oliver helping her. That's not good enough. With everything Crystal did, she needed to suffer more to make redemption even remotely worth it. But no, apparently that wasn't in the cards. Her overworking herself even when Oliver comes back doesn't make up for it either. Ignoring episode 4 entirely for a moment, I actually googled paroxetine's withdrawal side effects, and while it generally seems like the symptoms aren't awful if they show up, there is a chance they could get really bad, so yeah. Fuck you, Crystal. The way I see it, Crystal has no redeeming qualities whatsoever, and I am thoroughly convinced that the only reason anyone likes her is because she's hot. So there's people who simp for her. If Crystal was... I don't find her attractive. Do you find her attractive? If so, I seriously question that. But my point is, if Crystal was a man, I'm convinced that she wouldn't have half the fans that she does. I am genuinely baffled at just how bad she is. Crystal by herself actively lowers the quality of the season for me. She is the worst, bar none. Oh, and also there's the beard guy and the stupid pup. I'm not ranking them, I don't care.
A giant woman, a giant woman.
Crystal was at the bottom because there's a lot wrong with her, but the next character has very little about them at all. Maggie feels like a character that the series just didn't care about, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some characters get left to the wayside, it happens. But that means those characters are going to suffer from lack of substance, and Maggie is, unfortunately, a shining example of that. Credit where it's due, for someone who got eliminated in episode 4, she's characterized pretty well. She's anxious, shy, and mostly a gentle giant. Her relationship with Kai is kinda cute, and I like some of her interactions with Lake and Rosa Maria. So in other words, Maggie is a better character then Stacy. I bet you thought I was gonna say Nichelle. Well, too bad. I'm not predictable like that. So while Maggie does have her positives, for the most part I just don't care about her. At all. The other pre-mergers have more interesting stories, more enjoyable personalities, and they leave bigger impacts in the season. Again, this is just my opinion, but I feel like Maggie really doesn't have much going for her. She's not poorly written per se, as she does have substance. I'm just personally not attached to what substance is there. I can cut her some slack for going out early, but on a whole, she's just sorta lame.
Oh my Karen, oh my Karen.
Fucking Carol. I feel like her placement here should be pretty self-explanatory. She's a Karen. We don't like Karens. They're annoying and entitled and obnoxious, but I guess she is a little more than just that archetype, so I guess I'll go into that. Her animal lover trait is honestly a pretty good one. It's not a crutch for her character, but it's also brought up frequently enough to make it feel like an important part of her character. I also kinda liked her role in episode 9. She provided a much needed antagonistic role for the episode, which led the plot to be much more interesting as a result. Was it worth having her return to the show after being booted in episode 2? No, it wasn't. Given the fact that she just immediately gets eliminated the first episode back, it kinda makes it redundant. At least give her 2 episodes to compete instead of just 1. As is, she serves as a passable antagonist in episode 9, but that's really the most I can give her. Maybe if she stuck with James and Aiden in the pre-merge, and James didn't completely shit the bed with his plan of voting her out, seriously, what the hell was he thinking? Then maybe we could have gotten somewhere with her. I'm not saying Odd Nations had to do this, but given what Carol's role in the season turned out to be, and how unpleasant she was in it, I can't say that I care too much for her. Overly rude characters like this are a slippery slope in TD fan series, and they can become really rotten if not handled correctly. And in Carol's case, I'm not impressed with her. D tier.
Those are just symbols the man uses to try to propagate social division.
Originally, there were 3 other characters that I was going to put here, and they were gonna be beneath the character in 13th place, but upon rewatch, I noticed some positives that I didn't before, and I decided to look at them under a different lens. So the last person in D tier is gonna be someone else, and hear me out for a moment. Contrary to what some of my other videos may indicate, I don't think every character needs to have a multi-layered character arc and multiple intricate dynamics in order to be a good character. Nah, obviously if a character has that, that's great, but if they don't, they can still be a good, enjoyable character so long as they make a good impact in their short time on the show. And unfortunately, there's one more of Disventure Camp's early boots who misses that mark for me. And that character is Kai. Haha, gotcha. On a real note, Kai isn't a bad character by any means. No, he's perfectly fine. I'm just not wowed by him or any of the things that he does. Okay, so while I generally think that Kai's placement here on this list is valid, I feel like I was way too nice to him in this section. Upon my 4th watch through of Disventure Camp Season 2, I've come to the conclusion that Kai is mid as fuck, actually. So any compliments I give to his character are generally true, just keep in mind that I'm probably being nicer to him than he really deserves. His relationship with Maggie is fine, but it's not really that interesting to me personally. Like, they make a cute couple, I guess, but I'm not invested in them, and I could care less if they end up together or not. I think the thing I like most about Kai is probably his character design. Take one look at him and you know exactly what he's all about. Problem is, I'm just not a big fan of what he's all about. Call it character preference, but my view of characters who are all love, peace, harmony, and probably a ton of weed, man, has significantly changed after Z, who obviously set a record for how likable a total drama character can be. And outside of all of that, Kai doesn't have too much going for him. Except for his dynamic with Yule. I actually really like it when these two bounce off each other. Yule's cruel attitude gets under Kai's skin at first, but slowly there's an animosity that starts building up between the two. And in episode 3, that animosity is unleashed, and Kai absolutely blows the fuck up at Yule. And it's a pretty damn good scene, if I do say so myself. I think it's Kai's best scene. Other than that, though, he's Kai alright, and I don't really care for him.
Shut the up!
I went back and forth between this placement and the one after it, but ultimately I decided that 11th place would have to go to someone who showed a modicum of potential, but ultimately failed to capitalize on it. Hunter, 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 where do I begin? Hunter's archetype is the player, which could mean a lot of things, but given his plot for the season, I think it's pretty clear what definition they're using. His plot is centered around himself, Allie, and Tess in this sorta love triangle, but not really because I'm pretty sure they're poly. The point is he's involved in a romance plot where he is the central character and easily the least interesting of the three. Now you could say it's just because he's a basic white boy, and while I do see the criticism for that, I don't really think that's the issue. I like basic characters. I am a staunch Trent defender, and likely will be until the day I die. But with Hunter, it's just, I don't know, something's not quite right. When I finished my rewatch, I knew for a fact that I wasn't satisfied with Hunter in this season, but I wasn't able to figure out what it was about him that I didn't like until I remembered Aiden and Rhea's confrontation in the finale. I rewatched that scene, and then I watched the final scene between Hunter, Tess, and Allie, and then I knew what it was. It's his voice actor. I really don't want to bully the VA or diminish the work that he put in, but I really wasn't sold on his performance. I'll talk about the voice acting overall in the second video, so I'll keep it brief. Hunter's voice suits the character well. His delivery is clear and concise. The problem is, well, let me put it this way. There are multiple scenes where it feels like Hunter should have been at a 10 or a 1, and he's just always around a 5 or 6. For most of the dialogue, that's fine, but during some of the emotional scenes, I felt like it really lessened the impact, and overall, Hunter really didn't stick with me because of that. And honestly, it might not even be the VA's fault. It could be an issue with voice direction, who knows? So not long ago, I realized that the VA for Aiden actually watches my channel, so there's a non-zero chance that other Disventure Camp VAs are going to see this video, and Hunter's VA, if for some reason you're watching this video, please do not take anything I say to heart. You got so much better in All-Stars, oh my god. I really don't like to be mean to people who are clearly just putting in their all for a project they're passionate about, but I feel like it had to be said here. But even aside from that, Hunter just isn't that interesting. I like some of the scenes he has with Tess and Allie, some of them, but I feel like I enjoy this plotline a lot more when he's not there. And likewise, I enjoy him a lot more when he's not around them. I think he's at his best when he's separated from the two. Episode 10 is probably his best episode, because it gets him to think on his feet. Additionally, I do like his interactions with Rosa, and I like how he fought for his place in the game despite the odds. Episode 11 isn't a bad episode for him either, even if he took a back seat for the most part. So overall, he's fine. Here's hoping All-Stars will make him more interesting. Or make him an early boot, honestly either or. Man, I was on that shit!
Why should I worry?
Oliver! He is perfectly alright. He's nothing special, a comical first boot turned intern, but I don't know, I just think he's kinda funny. I think I like him better as a contestant because he's just so pathetic and dumb and it makes me smile. I love his confessional in episode 1 where he's just like, "This is it, everyone! After being born with glass bones and paper skin and fire ants in my pancreas, I'm finally going to be remembered!" Which, like, first off, it's hilarious that he expects winning a challenge to be his big break, and secondly, it's even funnier that he breaks down and has a hallucination about his former boss bullying him. I love that. As an intern, he's alright. He kinda loses some of his charm, but he's more than fine, and definitely the best staff member. Granted, considering the rest of the staff consists of the bitch, the beard guy, and the stupid fucking puppet. Seriously, why can it move? That's so dumb. The bar is pretty low. Anyway, Oliver, yeah, he's cool. I like him okay. As far as interns go, you could do a lot worse. He definitely left a positive impact.
Girl boss time.
Okay, I know I said I went back and forth between the last two, but these next two, I was stumped over who to put lower. So I looked back through all the episodes and decided to rank them based on the number of episodes where I actively enjoyed them. The character in 8th place had 5 episodes, and Rhea had 4. Yes. Really. Full disclosure, if I had made this ranking after I finished the season for the first time, Rhea would probably be dead last, but now that I've rewatched the series with fresh eyes, I realized that it would have been the wrong call. Because Crystal is so fucking bad, oh my god, how the hell did anyone let her do this? But also because, in retrospect, Rhea's probably better than I gave her credit for. My biggest problem with her happens in episodes 5 through 8, or I guess I should say it doesn't happen because she doesn't do anything in those episodes. 5 is... She and Rosa are the least important team in episode 6. 7, I genuinely don't remember what she did, that episode was so forgettable. And in episode 8, she was playing third wheel to Lake and Rosa, who had a lot more to do that episode. Granted, it's not like she had nothing going on for these episodes. Loneliness was always an important part of Rhea's character, and this struggle was amplified after Connor's elimination. That's a good direction to take a character, I just don't think it was executed as well as it could have been. Given her history as a minor Bollywood actress, I think it makes sense that she'd feel overlooked and tossed aside, both in the game and in real life. And on top of that, it does add fuel to the fire for her heel turn in later episodes. I have mixed thoughts on said heel turn. On one hand, I do really like how it's set up. I joked about her being a Disney twist villain to my friends when the episodes first came out, but honestly, I think it was set up pretty well. Up to this point, Rhea's seen people like James manipulate others and use dirty tactics to get their way, and justify it as an in-game strategy. That, coupled with the encouragement from Carol, serves as a pretty good segue into Rhea's turn to the dark side. Episode 10 is a really good showcase of this. I feel like her framing Rosa might not have been the best plan strategically, but if we go from the angle that she'd expect Rosa of all people to be okay with it in the end, it makes a bit more sense. I also like the confrontation at the end of the episode. I really enjoy Rosa's takedown of Rhea, hammering in some of her insecurities. That's good writing right there. What I really meant to say is that it's decent writing. Because I can acknowledge the work that went into Rhea, and in a vacuum, she really isn't that poorly written. No, All-Stars is a ways away for her. The main reason why I'm being so nice to Rhea is because I could at least see what the writers were going for, and it's really not a bad idea on paper. Does that mean it came out well? No, of course not! But I give the writers credit for trying. The only thing I think I'd really change is Rhea's confessional afterwards. That confessional makes her seem very outwardly evil, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense considering the character we know Rhea to be. So maybe instead of that, she could lament on her actions, questioning what went wrong, only to double down on this new strategy in order to make it to the end, proving her worth and hopefully not going home alone or a loser. It's not a big change, but one I feel would have added a lot of nuance to the character, because after episode 10, that depth is kinda gone. She just becomes mean. And like, that's probably the biggest reason why this change in character was so jarring for a lot of people. Rhea playing an antagonistic role wasn't a bad idea, but from her to go from a regular kind-hearted person to a callous, cutthroat bully in such a short amount of time is not a very smooth transition. She plays a decent role in the finale. I like the parallel arcs of James coming to respect other people and play for more than himself, while Rhea spirals, losing everyone until she sees the error of her ways. But ultimately, this version of Rhea with all these interesting attributes is far less prevalent in the series than the version of Rhea who is, by all intents and purposes, Rosa Maria's second most important friend. And yeah, it doesn't help Rhea's case that she was competing so much with Lake for screen time. That's a problem a lot of Disventure Camp characters have, but you can't really get more tragic than Lake in this case. Rhea's a character I have a lot of mixed feelings about, and while the execution wasn't perfect, I can still appreciate the effort that went into making her arc, and that's all I have to say about her. During my first watch through of Disventure Camp, I thought that Rosa Maria had nothing going for her and made it way too far in the season despite that. But now that I think about it, I was really only half right. Rosa Maria isn't half bad. She has plenty of good moments, mostly at the tail end of the season, which seems to be a bit of a trend now that I think about it. She's definitely the most down-to-earth character in the season, and just generally a very good person. She doesn't have the most entertaining personality, but not all characters have to be that way. This isn't a bad character archetype at all. The problem with Rosa is that she's too defined by her relationships to others and not anything she herself has done. Her main role in the series seems to be elevating other characters with her support. We see this with Lake, Rhea, and even James in the finale. Three dynamics where the other character is going through their own personal situation, and Rosa is there to provide support and push them forward. It's not like Rosa is devoid of personality outside of this. Episode 10, which I'm slowly beginning to realize might be the best episode of the season, gives Rosa some much needed spotlight. Episode 8 and the finale episodes are pretty good for her too. There's a very interesting and real character in Rosa that we often only get to see as a supporting role. And I'd be lying if I said that didn't diminish my appreciation for her just a bit. Support characters by themselves are fine. Just not 5th place fine. I get that it was important for Rosa to be there in order to progress Rhea's arc, but I can't help but think that with some minor tweaking, Rosa could have been booted a little earlier without changing the trajectory of the season too much. And that would have allowed some other characters with more interesting stories some more time to shine. There's 4 of them higher up on this list who thankfully are going to get another shot in All-Stars, but I struggle to imagine that all of them are going to be able to split screen time, especially with the Season 1 cast. Hey, hello, me again. So, at this point, I actually have seen All-Stars up to this point, and I do know how good the cast is. Real talk, it's a good cast, and to be fair, I can't really be too disappointed with who got cut considering most people got in anyway. So even though I know what happens, I can confidently say that all of these characters, I believe, can provide entertainment value to this season, which is something I can't say for every All-Stars cast. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Rosa Maria is perfectly acceptable. I have mixed feelings about her, but overall, I have more good to say than bad. So, good. So fun fact, I have several friends who hate Lake, and honestly, I understand why. Lake is not breaking any ground. You could kinda tell where her plot is going by the end of episode 1, and there is exactly one twist in that whole storyline, and it's that she's bald. So while I understand why my friends don't like her, that doesn't mean I have to agree with them. She is in the top half of the list for a reason. And that reason is because she has something to do for the first half of the season. This is not something that I can say for Rhea and Rosa. Seriously, these are the 2 female characters you push the farthest? That makes no sense. So I give credit to Lake for actually managing to justify her placement in the game and being Kinda entertaining. Wait, why did I put her at the top half of this list? Is it literally just because Rhea and Rosa were so boring in the first half of the season that Lake gets moved up here by default? Oh my god. No, that can't be it. Let's see what else we've got. Ooh, I like her dynamic with Aiden. It's a fun pair that keeps Aiden from getting too reliant on James and keeps Lake from getting too reliant on Rosa. I really would have liked to see more of them together, but as is, her helping him in the finale was pretty good. Her dynamic with Rosa is fine. It's sweet, but like most things with Rosa, I'm kinda lukewarm about it. Her whole deal is that she comes from an esteemed family who expects great things of her, and the stress of living up to those expectations causes her a great deal of pain and suffering. This leads to an arc about her trying to overcome the pressure of her parents, and you've seen this arc before somewhere else. To be fair, using well-explored plot lines like these aren't necessarily a bad thing as long as there's something new or interesting to set it apart. And unfortunately, Lake's story doesn't really have that. It doesn't help that her parents never make any sort of physical appearance, which really could have helped. It's certainly an okay plot, I even like it at some points, but I think it's mostly generic. That's ultimately how I feel about Lake herself. There's nothing wrong with her, but she is generic, and that weighs her down.
Ugh, fine, I guess you are my little PogChamp. Come here.
I'm doing these next two together because a lot of what I have to say about one can also apply to the other. So all I gotta say is, man, I really wanted to like Allie and Tess a lot more than I did. Deadass, the interactions between these two, easily some of the best of the season. As much as I love James and Aiden, which you can deduce from them not being mentioned on the list yet, I think there's something really genuine about the relationship between Tess and Allie. When these two have a conversation that manages to pass the Bechdel test, their chemistry is really compelling. The conversation about Allie's grandpa and the scene in the cave are much more genuine and much more interesting than anything that either of them have with Hunter. Granted, they aren't earth-shattering scenes of amazing writing, but they're good. I like these two together. They make for a genuinely interesting and entertaining dynamic in a season that, I'm gonna be honest, ain't got that many. But they're both weighed down so much because they're so attached to Hunter, they're kind of pigeonholed around him. And that's such a shame, because even though Tess and Allie rarely speak with anyone outside of the triangle, the brief glimpses we do get are pretty revealing. Allie and Connor have this interaction in episode 2, and it's a good one, since it establishes something about both of the characters in addition to just being a really funny scene. To me, this feels like a very natural and enjoyable dynamic that went completely unused. You have the out-of-touch boomer and the Gen Z gamer girl. This dynamic kinda writes itself. Here's a quick hypothetical to explain what I mean. If Connor doesn't get eliminated in episode 3, Allie could have been a great character to help him realize that he can't just cling on to the past, and that he can do a lot of good by using his age to guide the younger generations. And Allie, well, given what we know about her and her grandfather, it's not a stretch to say that a growing bond with Connor could have helped fill that hole in her heart, and maybe could have led to some heartfelt moments between the two. At that point, it pretty much is just fanfiction. Maybe I'll bring this up in a Disventure Camp my way, or a rewrite, or something. I can tell you one thing, if I ever do get around to doing it, I'm sure as hell not editing it. But just from that very brief description, doesn't that sound like a much better use of Allie's character than just Hunter's gamer girlfriend? It kind of feels like anything else potentially interesting about Allie is shafted in favor of Odd Nations using her as a tool for fan service. Granted, that's not just an Allie problem, but I feel like with her specifically, it's especially tasteless. Tess is a little better because she has that whole thing with depression going on, and, you know, that's something. I think it's handled pretty tastefully, and it actually gives Hunter a decent scene too, so that's always nice. God knows he needs it. But Tess was obviously such a non-priority this season that it's evident they really didn't put in that much effort to flesh out her arc. I'm guessing that's because they're saving it for All-Stars. They are, and there's a noticeable shift between Tess the character and Tess the goth girlfriend, which is admittedly a problem I might want to talk about at a later date. But really? 7th boot? You sure there might not be anything else to expand upon there? Did we really need to keep Lake around for another episode? Kinda felt like her story was over by this point. Tess is better off than Allie in terms of characterization and plot, but she is really lacking in character dynamics aside from Hunter and Allie. Aside from those two, I can't name a single other person that I know she spoke a word to, and that's really sad. And yeah, she talks to people now in All-Stars, but that doesn't really fix what happens here. If anything, giving Tess normal human interactions in All-Stars just goes to show how bad she has it here. An obvious place to start would be Yule, considering they were, you know, in an alliance. Yule's pretty rude towards everyone, but given how Tess is usually quiet and low energy, these two probably could have been really effective allies. You know, had Rhea not swapped him over to the other team. I'm not gonna go into too much detail on that, that is a whole other video topic altogether. The point is, Tess and Allie are both characters that showed a lot of potential, but the series didn't seem interested in writing them as anything more than Hunter's girlfriends. They had two really good characters in their hands, and they just used them for the most boring plotline possible. I guess the poly rap is cool though. Or you know, it was until they walked that back. Or at least that's what it seems like at the moment. I don't really know what the plan is here, but it does feel very unfortunate that this representation was kinda shoved under the rug in All-Stars.
Hey, Aiden.
Aiden! I don't know, there's nothing super special about him as a character, but I just kinda like him. Plus, he serves as trans representation, which you love to see. I promise I didn't put him high just because of that, hear me out. Aiden is a very genuine and regular guy. As I said before, I think he and Lake are a very good pair, and their interactions are quite nice. I also like how he interacts with Carol, both in the pre-merge and after her return. It's an interesting dynamic. But obviously, we can't talk about Aiden's relationships without bringing up James. These two play off each other incredibly well. James is obviously a devious little scamp who gets himself into a lot of trouble, so that leaves Aiden to pick up the pieces of his actions. I think Aiden's reactions to James are pretty realistic, all things considered. It makes sense that Aiden wouldn't want to trust James after the Carol elimination, but since he's obviously fond of James, it also makes sense he'd start to warm back up to him after James turned on Yule. But more than that, these two just have a lot of good chemistry together, and for Aiden's part, he serves as the voice of reason in the relationship, serving as a vital anchor to keep James in line, and a confidant for some of the other characters too. And if that were all there was to him, he'd still be pretty high up on the tier list for sure, but what elevates him to this point is the vocal performance. Vicester, I swear to God I wrote this section before I knew you watched my stuff. I'm not just doing this to gain favor. I can say pretty confidently that your performance as Aiden is the best vocal performance of Season 2. I have watched the Spanish dub of Season 2, and I think Aiden is really the only character that I prefer in English, so yeah. Great job. I don't know why this is the case, but Aiden's VA is just significantly better than the rest of the English dub cast. So Aiden ends up having the widest range of emotions of the entire cast, and that heavily bolsters a lot of the harder hitting scenes that he's a part of. The thunderstorm scene in episode 6, the scene where he comes out to James, they're falling out later in that same episode, and pretty much everything in episodes 12 and 13 is heavily enhanced by Brandon Belk's really committed performance. This is the type of voice acting that separates a pretty decent character from a pretty good one, and ultimately that's what pushed Aiden up this far. No idea what he's gonna do in All-Stars, but you know, I'm excited for it. Jake, leave the boy alone! What did he do to you? Man, I just cannot get enough of this weaselly little menace. Right from the get-go, Yule establishes himself as a self-absorbed player with no regard for what anyone thinks of him, and it makes for a delightful combination. As rude as he is, he's not mean enough to where it becomes obnoxious. Aside from his bullying of Maggie, most of Yule's nasty attitude is used in moderation. It's clear that he knows when to pump the brakes and to put on a kind front, making it clear that he's not going to be outwardly hostile, rude, and nasty at all times, and still somehow make it insanely What is that run? Why did I write this in the script? Despite how rude he can be, it's clear he knows when to cut back, giving him a justifiable reason to make it far despite how much of a dick he is. There are a lot of characters both in canon and out that have this problem. His interactions with James indicate that he's clearly mean enough to be the season's central villain, but not awful enough to immediately get himself eliminated. He also shows himself to be one of the most strategic players in the cast, at least at first. Day 1, he forms an alliance with two people who seem to get along very well, and he's even able to work out a plan to save himself during a very unfavorable swap. Man, Yule really knows what he's doing. I wonder what he's going to get into later in the Oh, he gets eliminated during episode 5 because James fed him a poisoned mushroom and then he's just gone, okay. What a disappointment. Like Tess, I'm almost 100% sure that they're going to set him up for a deeper run in All-Stars. He's actually my favorite character in All-Stars. He's made me laugh more than once. My only concern is that Odd Nations might end up going too far with his relationship with Gret, so hopefully it doesn't come to that. That being said, these two are the best part of the season thus far. But, I don't know, I think this season definitely would have benefited from more Yule. It's not like everyone else was best friends or anything, but his presence definitely would have kept things from getting too chummy, and I have no doubt that if he made it just one episode further, he could have been a serious contender. But as is, we're going to have to settle for Yule being a #robbed king. Carol, Rhea, and even Crystal tried filling the villain role at different points in the series, but I feel like Yule's charisma and edge just can't be topped. As tempted as I am to call James's poisoning of Yule a rare James L, I'm unsure about that, because it was a smart decision and a pretty satisfying downfall for a pretty douchey villain. But also because, if you've been keeping track, James hasn't appeared on the list yet. Is James causing the elimination of the best villain enough to keep him from the top spot?
Second!
Nope, second place goes to Connor, aka the father I never had. I feel like anyone who's seen Season 2 knows just how excellent Connor is. What doesn't he have going for him? For starters, he's just really funny. Every scene of comedy that Connor is involved in gets a laugh out of me. I love that he runs up to the tech-savvy group and asks if they want to add him on MySpace. It's so good. And his story is probably one of the most compelling ones in the season. He's a middle-aged man who came on the show to try and recapture his youth, but quickly finds himself completely out of touch with the younger people around him. But after forming a bond with Rhea, he comes to the realization that he's just not young anymore. He's turning 50 and his glory days are behind him, but he can still use the wisdom he's gained over all those years to help the younger people around him. I just realized that I used the term "the younger people around him" twice in the same script. Whoops. Considering how most total drama casts are teenagers or young adults, this plot felt very fresh and I liked the way it was handled. Connor's a very charming guy. He's like that one uncle who takes your family on nice vacations and gives you important life advice that you really need to hear. So seeing him succeed and come to terms with his situation is really nice. I think this makes him one of the most rootable members of the cast, aside from maybe Lake, but I mean, come on. Who do you think is more interesting? But he's not just a pushover either. When Connor gets serious, he's not afraid to spit some harsh words. I particularly like the way he handled Kai and Yule's conflict in episode 2. It shows that he can be diplomatic and reasonable while being harsh at the same time. Just from the offset, Connor has an amazing start as a character. There's so many ways his character could go, so many dynamics he could have, and so many turns in his personal story. And they eliminated him in episode 3!
Why?
Odd Nations, you had gold with Connor, and you just threw him away in a half-hearted double. I don't get it. It's not even that hard to fix. Just cut the double and have Connor get eliminated in episode 6 instead. Or move some characters around and have someone else get eliminated in episode 6. The way the episodes are set up, by episode 3, it seems like Connor's story should just be beginning, not ending for the sake of saving Rhea of all characters. And ultimately, that's probably the only real flaw I can attribute to Connor. His arc and storyline, while interesting, aren't really given too much room to breathe in the span of 3 episodes. I feel like the payoff would have been enhanced if we had more time to see Connor struggle to fit in. An extra scene with Rhea here or there, and some more scenes where he imparts his wisdom on the other contestants. I feel like that would have been way more compelling than literally anything that Hunter did. Seriously, does anyone actually like Hunter? I swear, he's one step above Kirito from Sword Art Online in terms of personality and character. But Connor? Nah, he ain't about that. He's just living his life, and he's a true king for it. All-Stars, please give this legend the run he deserves.
All-Stars has not given him the run he deserves. As of right now, Connor is the 5th boot, which is way too fucking early when Gabby and Rhea are still in the game. Although, I have been informed there is more than likely a comeback challenge, so provided Connor wins that, returns to the game, and actually gets the arc that he deserves, we will be fine. Should that not happen, however, my impression of All-Stars will be significantly less favorable than it would be otherwise.
Baby, make that whistle blow. Can you blow my whistle, baby? Whistle, baby, let me know. Girl, I'm gonna show you how to do it. And you start real slow. You just put your lips together and you come real close. Can you blow my whistle, baby? Whistle, baby.
There was never any doubt in my mind who the number one character would be. Disventure Camp has some funny characters. It has characters who I think are well written, and it has characters who just bring me joy just by being themselves. But the only character to do all of those things is my main man, James! I love this guy. Everything about him just works. I find his eccentric personality coupled with his vocal delivery to be incredibly funny and intriguing. James can just say words, and I'll find it funny. He's just that good. If James was an early boot, I would be ironically standing him the same way I do Rodney.
Bing bong, hey, what's up? You're doing a bad job.
And the same way I stand Caleb in Season 1, but obviously as of Season 2, I now stand him unironically. But James isn't just a funny man. No. He's a man of strategy. Jokes aside, James is probably one of the best strategists in the season. Don't get me wrong, he's prone to making some bad decisions. Like in episode 2, his whole plan is to get rid of Carol. It's just dumb. It's a bad plan. James is in a 3 versus 3 situation, and his plan is to turn everyone against one of his 3 in order to buy him and Aiden more time. But in doing so, he eliminates a vital number, and it turns his number 1 ally against him. Like, James, who'd you think was going next? If Yule didn't get swapped over to your team, you were absolutely the next one gone. You were almost a robbed king. But guess what? Unlike most of the other characters I just mentioned, James wasn't robbed in the slightest. Because James, against all odds, won the season. I cannot even begin to describe the euphoria I felt when James of all characters, won Disventure Camp Season 2. I thought for sure it was gonna be Aiden, but Odd Nations completely pulled the wool over my eyes with this one. And honestly, I think James is the perfect winner. He easily develops the most out of any other character this season. Starting out as a fame-obsessed influencer who only uses the people around him to advance his game, to a more thoughtful person who grows genuinely close to Aiden and learns to treat the people around him much better. And as mentioned before, this ends up creating a parallel between him and Rhea in the finals. While James is someone who begins the game using others to his advantage, and ending it as someone who relied on those close to him to help him succeed, Rhea started the game alone, and found that manipulation of others is what helped her advance her goals, so she abandons everyone close to her in order to win the game for herself. That change in Rhea's personality is at least in some part due to James's actions early on in the season. Rhea saw how well the game was going for James due to his underhanded tactics and took the wrong lesson away from it. So in a way, the finale of the season is James facing the personification of his old self. Do I think Odd Nations recognize these parallels? Probably not, but it sure is fun to call attention to them. In terms of negative things to say, well, aside from his dumbass strategy to vote off Carol, I'm not a big fan of the scene where he and Aiden fall out. Aiden's acting is obviously on point, but I feel like it's a little hard to take James seriously when one of the results of this argument is him getting cancelled. Like, the fact that he had a confessional saying that he'd been cancelled on social media immediately took me out of the scene because it was too damn funny. But aside from that, yeah, I really like James. He's not perfect by any means, but he's the most enjoyable character from Season 2 for sure, and I quote his lines way more often than I'd like to admit. I doubt that he'll be in All-Stars for that long, but I'm going to savor every episode he's in.
Okay, could you tell that this video was recorded several months before All Stars came out? Lol.
Why did you take him away
we
from
didn't
me?
know. We didn't know, chat.
He didn't deserve this.
Like and subscribe
Why
for more
couldn't it have
awesome
been
Let's Gang
Rhea?
content. I
Who
never
the
want to
fuck
edit
likes
videos again.
Rhea? That's a joke, by the way. I know why James got cut first. I'm pretty sure they had some complications with his VA and he was unable to record the lines. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what I'm going with. Because if it's not that, then they would have no reason to boot James first. But that's gonna wrap up the video. I am so fucking sorry that it took this long. I really didn't think that it would, but I ran into so many issues with like college stuff and other real life issues, and also my editor fucked up and my computer was messed up for a little bit. I'm really sorry. I'd like to promise that this would never happen again, and I'm probably gonna try and stick on the ball a little more, but I can't really make any promises. But I will try my best for more consistent uploads, and more than that, I'm gonna make sure every video I upload to this channel is going to be quality content. But in the meantime, I hope you really enjoyed the video, and who are your favorite Disventure Camp characters from Season 2? Leave them down below, and I'll see what you guys think, and I'll make fun of you if you have bad taste. Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and maybe subscribe if you feel so inclined. It really does help out the channel. Have a good day, everyone, and I will see you all next time.